"Hey, step away from him or I swear, I'll drop you where you stand." Mia Carter's voice sliced through the night air like a bullet. Her heels clacked sharply against the damp Brooklyn pavement as she stormed into the alley, eyes blazing, jaw tight. The three men surrounding the lone figure turned toward her in surprise, their aggression faltering for a split second. That was all they needed to scatter scurrying like cornered vermin into the shadows. The man they'd been attacking slumped against the wall, breathing hard, blood trickling from a split lip. "You all right?" Mia asked, crouching beside him, scanning for worse injuries. He looked up slowly, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Yeah, thanks to you," he muttered. "I didn't think anyone would stop." She exhaled hard, her adrenaline still racing. "Lucky for you, I don't scare easy." His name was Mike. That's all he gave her at first. His hands were scraped, his coat torn, but his voice was steady. Too steady. Mia didn't notice yet. All she saw was a man who'd been jumped and refused to crumble. "Come on," she said, reaching down. "There's a diner nearby. Let me get you something hot before you pass out." 15 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Steam curled from their coffee cups. Mia leaned back, studying him between sips. "So, Mike, what brings you to Brooklyn at this hour?" He gave a strained smile. "Trying to find work. I just moved here. It's been rough." "Where are you from?" "Philly. Used to do contract work. A bit of everything: security, repairs." "And now?" "Now," he said, pausing for effect, "I'm a single dad trying not to screw it all up." That made her pause. "You have a kid?" "Yeah, 7. Bright. Too bright. He's staying with my sister until I get on my feet." Something softened in her face. "You remind me of someone," she said. "A guy I knew in college. Rough edges, but heart in the right place." She hesitated, then added, "I run a tech company not far from here. We've got an opening in facilities. Temporary, but it's something. You want in?" Mike blinked. She was offering exactly what he needed on a silver platter. "Just like that? You didn't run when they came at you. That says enough." He nodded. "Then yeah, I'd be honored." And that was the moment it began. Not the job, not the plan, the guilt. That night, back in his sparse motel room, Mike opened the hidden compartment in his duffel and pulled out a slim, encrypted laptop. He typed in his handler's secure channel, "Contact made, inside in 24 hours." He hesitated only a second before sending. He didn't let himself feel anything as he closed the lid. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Mike stood in the gleaming lobby of Solara Innovations. Glass walls, clean lines, smiling receptionists. A different world. Mia greeted him personally, pressed slacks, simple jewelry, a presence that filled the space. "Let's get you set up," she said, handing him a badge. "We're building something important here. Big contracts, government interest. You'll hear whispers, ignore them. Just focus on the job." Mike nodded. "Copy that." She raised an eyebrow. "Military?" "Sort of," he replied. "Truth, but with gaps." Just like he'd rehearsed. He met the team: Carol from HR, who watched him like a hawk. Derek from IT, all jokes and snacks. Sandra from logistics, warm and curious. But all Mike could focus on were the angles, camera placements, badge entry points, blind spots. Every second he moved in that building was part of the mission. At lunch, he slipped away from the crowd and accessed a maintenance terminal on the 3rd floor. From his boot, he pulled a USB key disguised as a broken keychain. It plugged in smoothly, the data worm activating silently, slipping into Solara's system undetected. Within 60 seconds, it began mapping the internal network for anything tagged: confidential, government, prototype. By 5 p.m., he was wiping down hallway floors when Mia passed by again. "You don't waste time, huh? Best way to stay out of trouble," he replied. She paused. "You know, I've had people take advantage of my trust before. Then maybe I should thank you for risking it again." She gave him a look, half curiosity, half warning, and walked on. That night, back in his room, Mike sat on the edge of the bed. He stared at the blinking cursor on his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keys but didn't move. For some reason, Mia's voice kept echoing in his head. "I don't scare easy." He whispered into the silence, "You should." But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure who he was warning her, or himself. The next week passed in a blur of routine and recon. Mike arrived early, stayed late, memorized everything, every hallway, password change, conversation behind closed doors. He was a shadow in the corridors of Solara Innovations, a ghost with a mop and a mission. No one noticed the way he lingered near server rooms. No one questioned how he always seemed to know where the engineers would be before they got there. And Mia was everywhere and nowhere, commanding in the boardroom, generous in the break room, invisible when she wanted to be. He watched her the way a man watches a storm on the horizon, distant but undeniable. She smiled when she passed him in the hallway, always said hello, always used his name. That was the part he didn't expect, the way she made him feel like a person. Not an asset, not a threat, just Mike. By the fourth day, Mike had logged enough data to start Phase 2. He had access to the project floor barely, and that was enough to intercept communications between Mia's executive team and a federal contractor. Something big was happening. A new prototype involving military-grade AI targeting systems. It was worth millions, maybe billions. His employers wanted a full copy of the specs, and Mike knew the clock was ticking. But the longer he stayed, the more the lines blurred. The woman he thought was just a pawn in a corporate game turned out to be a chess master in stilettos. Smart, strategic, and startlingly kind. That morning, she brought him coffee, not through an assistant, not as a gesture. She just appeared beside him while he was rewiring a faulty breaker in the utility stairwell. "You looked like you needed this," she said, handing him the steaming cup. "They don't pay me enough to make that face before 9 a.m., he joked, accepting it with a nod. "Rough night?" "Just long," he replied. She tilted her head, searching his face. "You ever going to tell me what you really did before this?" "Nope," he said without missing a beat. She laughed, not pushing. "Fair enough." Later that afternoon, he passed by a conference room and heard raised voices. Mia was inside, standing firm against two board members, older men, in suits with tight mouths and sharp opinions. "We can't risk leaking this to the military without proper channels," one said. "It's not about risk, it's about control," Mia snapped. "This project was founded on principles, not profit. If we sell too fast, we lose everything." "You're too idealistic," the other muttered. "And you're too scared to imagine a world where people come before contracts," she fired back. Mike moved on before they saw him, but something inside him shifted. She wasn't just running a company, she was fighting to protect something bigger. That night, he opened his laptop and typed in a progress update. He stared at the blinking cursor. Then he deleted it. All of it. On Friday, just as he was preparing to upload the keylog file from the internal admin terminal, Mia found him outside the employee lounge, fiddling with the vending machine. "You free this weekend?" she asked casually. "My son's coming into the city. We're doing a staff, family picnic at the park. You should bring your boy. Let him meet some of the other kids." He froze. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she said. "Look, I know this job is temporary, but I also know what it's like to rebuild. You don't have to do it alone." Mike smiled slowly, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes but still means something. "We'll be there." Saturday was warm, the kind of New York fall day where the leaves crunch perfectly and the air smells like hot dogs and hope. Mike arrived at Prospect Park with his son Jordan, a wiry kid with bright eyes and a lopsided grin. Mia was already there, setting up tables, laughing with a small group of employees and their families. When she saw them, her face lit up. "This must be Jordan," she said, kneeling to shake his hand. "Your dad's been telling us stories." "All lies," Jordan replied, grinning. She laughed. "You're just like him." "Huh?" They spent hours there, tossing footballs, eating burgers, watching kids roll down grassy hills. Mike found himself forgetting why he was there, forgetting the mission. Just for a few moments, he wasn't a plant or a thief or a liar. He was just a dad, a man who might have had a chance at a different life. As the sun dipped low, Mia handed him a soda and leaned on the fence beside him. "You're a good father," she said softly. "He looks at you like he's invincible." "He makes me want to be," Mike answered, surprising even himself. She turned to him, eyes searching. "Whatever it is you're running from, I hope you stop someday. You don't strike me as a man meant for hiding." He looked at her for a long moment. "Some things are harder to leave behind than they seem." She nodded, then gently changed the subject. But the moment lingered quiet, full, and unfinished. That night, Mike didn't open his laptop. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while Jordan snored softly beside him on the motel bed. The silence pressed in, thick with choices. He could finish what he started, walk away with a payout and leave Solara behind. Or he could do something he hadn't done in years. He could stay. The next morning, he walked into Solara early and sat alone in the janitor's closet. He pulled the USB key from his pocket, stared at it, and closed his fist around it. Then he opened the closet door, walked to the security floor, and disabled the uplink to the external server. Just like that, the mission was severed. But things like that never go unnoticed. Not for long. By Monday, small things began to shift. An envelope slid under his motel door with no return address. Inside was a photo him at the picnic. Jordan in the background. No note, no instructions. Just a message, clear as daylight. We're watching. Mike knew then that walking away wouldn't be so easy. And for the first time since stepping into Solara, he was afraid. Not for himself, for her, for Jordan, for what would come next. Mike didn't sleep the night the envelope arrived. He sat in the dark motel room with the lights off, Jordan's quiet breathing steady beside him, while the photograph rested on the table like a landmine. It wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder of who he was, who he used to work for, and how no one really ever walked away. He'd seen this tactic before. The photo wasn't a warning, it was a leash. They weren't just watching. They were telling him they could touch what mattered most. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, like the walls were leaning in. At 5 a.m., he got dressed, wrote a note for Jordan, and left. Solara's building was still asleep when Mike arrived, but his ID badge got him through security. As he walked the empty corridors, every footstep echoed louder than the last. It wasn't just the risk of being caught, it was the weight of knowing he'd crossed a line. He hadn't sent the data. He'd severed the server uplink. He had made a choice, but that choice had consequences. He entered the electrical subroom on the maintenance floor, his private corner, invisible to most. From behind a false panel, he retrieved a burner phone he hadn't used in months. The line connected on the second ring. A voice, clipped and cold, answered. "Status?" Mike hesitated, his voice low. "I'm out." Silence. Then, "That wasn't your call." "It is now," he replied. "Find someone else. You made a commitment, and I'm breaking it." A pause. "You always had a weakness for women. That's what got you suspended the first time, remember?" Mike clenched the phone tighter. "Don't test me. Then you better run, Mike, because now it's not just business, it's cleanup." "Oh." He crushed the phone under his boot, one less tether, but he knew it was too late for clean exits. That afternoon, things started shifting. Mia was unusually quiet during the executive briefing, distracted, like she knew something was off. "Data shows a spike in background server activity last week," Derek from IT reported. "Nothing tripped alarms, but some of the patterns are strange." "Strange how?" Mia asked. "Like someone was poking around but knew how not to leave a trace." Mike felt his stomach tighten. She didn't look at him. Not yet. But she was putting pieces together. Later, as he mopped the lobby floors, Mia came over. Not with coffee, not with a smile, just eyes. Calm, but sharper than he'd ever seen them. "You okay?" she asked. He forced a nod. "Yeah, just tired." She said, as if filing the answer away. "You know, sometimes I wonder what people would do if the truth cost them everything they've built." He met her gaze. "Depends on what they built it for." She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. That night, Mike picked Jordan up from school and took him to an old Italian diner near Queensbridge. They ordered spaghetti and meatballs, shared garlic bread, and talked about nothing important. Jordan laughed about a paper airplane contest. Mike pretended like everything was normal, but under the table, his leg was bouncing. After dessert, as they walked to the car, he noticed a man sitting on a bench across the street, hoodie pulled low, not watching them directly, but not casual either. The hair on Mike's neck stood up. He tightened his grip on Jordan's shoulder. "Let's go." Back at the motel, he checked every corner. Nothing. Still, he packed 2 go bags and stashed them under the bed. He didn't know when they'd need to run, but he knew the question was no longer if, it was when. 2 days later, Mia called him into her office. Her tone was different, measured, formal. "Close the door." He did. "Sit." She stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes locked on his. Someone tried to breach our prototype repository. Didn't succeed, but they were close. That's serious, Mike said, playing dumb. Yeah, she nodded. The interesting part is they used a method known to only a handful of people. One of them used to work for a private intelligence firm. Their records are sealed, but I pulled some strings. She walked to her desk and picked up a folder. I found this. She tossed it on the table. Mike didn't look. He didn't have to. Why didn't you turn me in? He asked quietly. Because I wanted to believe you'd stop yourself, she said. And I'm still waiting for the truth. He looked at her, his jaw clenched. It started as a job, a setup. I needed in. The mugging, staged. The first day, scripted. All of it. She didn't flinch. And now? Now? He exhaled. I'm not the same guy who walked through that door. Convenient timing, she said, her voice harder. You lied, Mike. You put everyone here at risk. You smiled at me while setting the trap. I know, he said, and I'd take it back if I could, but I'm trying to fix it. Why? She asked. Because you caught feelings? Because I found someone worth protecting. The room fell silent. Then, quietly, she said, You need to leave. Now, before someone decides to make this bigger than I can control. You're already in it, he said. They know you're close to me. They sent me a photo of the picnic. They're watching you. That made her pause, just for a second. Then she said, Then you better help me make them stop. He blinked. What? You broke in. You know the holes in our system. You can help me seal them. And when this is over, you walk away. You'd trust me again? I don't trust you, she said. But I trust that you hate what you've become. That night, they stayed in the office late. Side by side, coding new firewalls, scrubbing traces, reconfiguring infrastructure. She didn't smile. He didn't talk much. But the silence wasn't empty. It was rebuilding something raw and fragile. Just before dawn, Mike looked at her and said, I can't undo what I did. She replied, Then build something better. And for the first time in years, he believed he could. Would you forgive someone who once tried to deceive you if they turned back and pulled you from the darkness? If this story made you reflect on second chances, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe Mike did the right thing, type 1 and let us know where you're watching from. The air in Solara's control room was thick with silent urgency. Fluorescent lights buzzed above as Mia and Mike huddled over the workstation, their fingers flying across keyboards in near-perfect sync. The digital map of the company's internal systems pulsed on the screen, red zones blinking sporadically like open wounds. They had closed 6 breaches in the past 2 hours, scrubbed 3 code worms, and isolated a backdoor protocol only someone from Mike's old unit could have installed. Mia didn't say much, but every glance she shot him told him she was doing what he used to do, calculating risk, measuring intent, preparing for betrayal. At 4:47 a.m., Mike sat back and rubbed his eyes. That's the last one. For now. Mia didn't relax. For now means someone's still trying. They are, he admitted. And they won't stop until they think you're compromised. Until they believe Solara is no longer a target worth bleeding for. She exhaled slowly, resting her arms on the edge of the desk. You know what's the worst part? I saw you. I saw your resume, your fake background, your quiet charm. And still, I brought you in. You didn't fool me, I let you in. That's not your weakness, he said. That's your strength. She gave him a look that almost resembled a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It feels like a mistake. By mid-morning, the company buzzed with a strange energy. Unspoken tension ran through every hallway. People whispered more, looked over their shoulders more. Sandra from logistics mentioned her car had been rifled through overnight. Derek got a fake phishing email from someone impersonating Mia's assistant. Even Carol from HR, normally unshakable, had her office ransacked, no files missing, just the sense that someone had been in her space. The enemy wasn't just outside anymore. They were inside, or close enough to leave fingerprints on lives. Mike kept his head down, but his senses were sharpened. The patterns were familiar: isolation tactics, fear psychology, rattle the insiders until they turn on each other. He'd seen it used on foreign diplomats. And now, it was being used on Mia's team. That night, after most employees had gone, Mike stayed late, pretending to mop the halls. In reality, he was watching, waiting. At 9:13 p.m., He caught movement in the stairwell that shouldn't have been there. A figure in a gray hoodie slipped through the emergency exit on the 3rd floor, bypassing the badge reader with a device Mike immediately recognized, a low-frequency signal bypasser used to mirror encrypted badge access. His badge. He moved quickly, silently, following at a distance, his body moving on old instincts. The intruder moved like a pro. Not a petty hacker, this was someone trained. Likely ex-field, like him. Possibly worse. He followed the figure to the sublevel, where the company's cold storage servers were housed. When the figure paused to scan the access port, Mike made his move. He lunged, pinning the intruder against the wall, grabbing the wrist, holding the device and slamming it back until the gadget fell with a sharp clatter. "Who sent you?" Mike hissed. The figure struggled, and when the hood fell back, Mike froze. It was Alex Klein, a name he hadn't heard in 5 years. A former colleague from a Black Ops unit buried so deep even its own agents doubted its existence. Alex's eyes were cold. "Didn't expect to see you playing janitor, Bishop," he said, using Mike's old alias. "Didn't expect to see you still breathing," Mike shot back. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Same as you. Orders." "From who? Does it matter?" "It does now." Mike tightened his grip. "You're in my house." Alex smirked. "You picked the wrong side." "Maybe, but I'm done burning down people who don't deserve it." With a swift motion, Mike knocked him unconscious with the heel of his palm, then zip-tied his wrists using emergency cable from the nearby panel. He grabbed Alex's device, wiped it, then disabled the camera feed from that hallway for the last 3 minutes. By the time security arrived, Mike had staged it as a lone break-in attempt. Mia didn't ask questions when she saw the intruder. She just looked at Mike, long and hard, before nodding to the guards. "Call federal enforcement. Tell them he's ex-contract intelligence, and we've detained him for federal breach." Use those exact words. Later that night, Mia sat in her office, hands trembling slightly as she sipped whiskey from a heavy glass. Mike stood at the door. "You okay?" "Define." "Okay," she replied. He stepped inside, leaned against the doorframe. "Alex was supposed to be dead." "Then maybe so were you," she said. "And somehow here you are." "Not sure for how long," he said, then added, "but as long as I am, I'll keep them out." She nodded slowly. "Why does it feel like we're not even close to done?" "Because we're not," he said. "You've rattled someone powerful. They won't stop." "Good," she said coldly. "Let them come. I'm done being polite." Mike walked closer. "That might make you dangerous." "You're the dangerous one," she said, meeting his eyes. "I just finally stopped being naive." The room felt different now. No longer employer and employee, not quite partners, not yet lovers. Something rawer, sharper, bound by fire and betrayal. He picked up the burner device Alex had dropped. "We can trace the handshake ping this sent. It'll lead us to whoever's pulling strings." "Then that's our next step," she said. "We go from defense to offense." He looked at her, and for the first time, she didn't seem like a CEO fighting for her company. She looked like a woman fighting for justice in a world that thrived on secrets. And for the first time, Mike realized he wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was fighting beside her. Whatever this thing between them was, it was forged in danger, and it was just getting started. By the time the sun broke over Manhattan, the entire skyline was washed in gold. But for Mike, the day felt anything but warm. He stood in the corner of Solara's server room, staring at the data Alex's device had attempted to transmit before being interrupted. Even with its memory partially wiped, the embedded signal logs still pulsed like echoes from another world. Coordinates, packet routes, routing fingerprints. Most people wouldn't know how to read them. Mike did, and what they told him was worse than expected. This wasn't just a one-off attempt, it was a systematic infiltration, a multi-layered campaign involving shell firms, rogue servers parked across jurisdictions, and a name that hadn't come across his radar since his final assignment, Noble Axis. Mia entered the room, holding 2 black coffees. She handed him one without a word and waited. He finally said, "Noble Axis." She froze. "That sounds familiar." "It should. It's the same firm that lobbied against Solara's clean grid patent 2 years ago, the one that tried to outbid you during the Senate Energy Commission hearings. They tried to bankrupt us," she murmured. "Tried, and failed. And now they're playing dirtier." Mike scrolled through the logs. "They're working through a network of ex-operatives, contractors, disposables, The kind who don't ask questions, just push buttons and break things. Mia sipped her coffee, her face pale but resolute. Then we need to move first. Over the next 48 hours, Mike built a profile: names, movements, meeting points. Mia activated a private audit team that worked independently from Solara's chain of command. They cross-checked shipments, cleared out corrupted access keys, and resecured every touchpoint of their systems. By the third day, a new pattern emerged, a connection between Solara's upcoming Nevada expansion and a dummy firm based in Zurich, allegedly tied to Noble Axis. The Zurich firm had made an unsolicited offer to one of Solara's shareholders behind closed doors, and under NDA urging them to leak internal designs of Solara's prototype wind core reactor in exchange for equity. That leak hadn't happened yet. Mia confronted the shareholder in question, a man in his 60s named Howard Renner, a legacy board member whose loyalty had always been more financial than ethical. The meeting was tense. Howard deflected, claimed ignorance, suggested Mia was chasing shadows. Mike watched from the corner of the room, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. When the man left, Mike said quietly, "He's lying." "I know," Mia replied, "but we can't accuse him without proof. He'll lawyer up faster than we can blink. Then we don't accuse, we bait." Mike began laying traps harmless, fictional data packets planted in isolated test servers, with digital fingerprints pointing toward breakthrough projects. Like clockwork, one of those traps was accessed using Howard's old credentials at 2:12 a.m. Mike captured the log, tracked the IP, and routed the signal through 3 continents before it finally bounced back to a terminal leased by the Zurich Shell Company. Proof, undeniable. When presented with the evidence the next morning, Howard didn't deny it. He simply looked at Mia and said, "You don't understand the kind of power you're challenging." "I understand perfectly," she replied, "and I'm not backing down. You think they won't destroy you? Let them try." Howard was removed from the board within the hour. The press never heard about it, but the ripples spread. Solara's investors were spooked. Share prices dipped. Whisper networks activated. And through it all, Mia remained unshaken. Until the night someone broke into her apartment. Mike had just dropped Jordan off with a neighbor when the alert pinged his phone. The silent alarm Mia had agreed to install weeks ago was tripped at 11:41 p.m. He got there in under 6 minutes. The front door was ajar, lights off, and the sound of shattered glass whispered from inside. Gun drawn, Mike stepped through the darkness like it was muscle memory. Living room, overturned lamp, hallway, muddy boot prints, kitchen, smashed vase. Upstairs, the bedroom door creaked. He found Mia standing against the far wall, a bloodied lip and a broken lamp in her hands like a makeshift weapon. Her attacker was already out cold, crumpled against the floor, a tall man in tactical black with a stun baton and voice modulator. Mike checked his pulse. Alive, barely. "He didn't expect me to fight back," Mia said through ragged breath. "They never do." Mike helped her sit. "You okay?" "I will be." "That was a message," Mike said. "A warning." "Then send one back," she said, louder. "They didn't call the police. There was no point. This wasn't street crime, it was corporate warfare." Mike took the attacker's ID, cloned the device, and dropped the man at a bus terminal 2 towns over. Then he returned and sat beside Mia for the rest of the night, a quiet sentinel in the corner of her apartment, eyes open, heart burning with something far more complex than duty. By dawn, a decision was made. Mia and Mike would go public not with names, but with the fact that Solara had been the target of covert aggression. They would leak a sanitized version of the attack, paired with a public statement of strength and renewed investment in digital infrastructure. They would rally public sentiment, preempt further sabotage by exposing it before it could deepen. "It's a risk," Mike said. "You're going to paint a target on your back." Mia looked at him. "It's already there. The difference now is that I'm not alone." That evening, as she stood before a press panel, flanked by her CTO and legal counsel, Mia delivered a short but powerful message. Solara stands for progress, for resilience, and for transparency. We've been challenged, we've been tested, but we are not shaken. Let it be known we will not be intimidated. The crowd responded with applause. But in the back, beyond the flashing lights and sound of camera shutters, Mike stood silently, watching, waiting, knowing the hardest part was still ahead, because in the world he came from, when people like Mia took a stand, The enemy didn't just strike harder, they struck deeper. And the next time, they wouldn't send one man, they'd send a war. The following days moved with deceptive calm, the kind of stillness that warned of an approaching storm. Solara's press conference made headlines in every major financial outlet, some praising Mia's bravery, others speculating whether it was corporate theater masking deeper trouble. But behind the scenes, a different kind of noise stirred. Anonymous emails began flooding the inboxes of Solara's board members. Some included out-of-context recordings of internal meetings, others fabricated documents hinting at regulatory violations. The intent was clear: discredit Mia, erode internal trust, weaken her hold from within. At 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, Mike stood in the hallway outside her office, arms folded as Mia stared at a printed copy of one of the emails. "This is their new strategy," she said, voice flat. "Death by implication. They want your own people to doubt you," Mike replied. "Make you look radioactive, even if nothing's real." She leaned back in her chair. "And the worst part? Some of them are starting to believe it." That morning, 2 board members called for a closed-door meeting. One of them, Julian Mars, was a legacy executive with roots in oil and coal investments industries Mia had threatened with her renewable energy initiatives. The meeting was informal, but everyone knew what it really was: a prelude to a vote of no confidence. Mike wasn't invited, of course, but he didn't need to be. As soon as the meeting began, he was in the adjacent conference room, headphones on, listening through the ventilation relay, a trick he'd picked up years ago in field surveillance. Julian's voice rang clear. "She's idealistic, dangerous. She paints targets on our backs and calls it leadership." Another voice, feminine, sharp, cut in. "She's brilliant, Julian. Solara is thriving. Temporarily," Julian snapped, "until her crusade collapses under its own weight. You want to oust her? I want to protect our legacy." Mike clenched his jaw. He'd heard that same justification before, in war zones, in backroom deals, in the tired speeches of men who feared change more than injustice. Later that night, as Mia walked into the security hub, Mike was already waiting with a dossier. "I think we need to turn over the last stone," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "What stone?" He opened the folder, revealing a printed satellite image of a storage facility in Pennsylvania, one registered to a logistics firm quietly purchased by Noble Axis 6 months earlier. "That's where they're routing the physical copies of the stolen data. It's a relay point, and I know someone who can get us in." Mia stared at the image, then at him. "You're talking about an off-book operation. No badges, no backup." "Yes. You're asking me to cross a line." "No," Mike said, his voice low. "I'm telling you we're already across it. The question now is, do we take control of the next step or let them write it for us?" The next day, under the guise of a strategic retreat, Mia left the city with Mike, driving toward rural Pennsylvania. The cover story was tight. Her assistant was instructed to keep things vague. The board thought she needed time to regroup. In truth, she was preparing to break into an illegal facility owned by her company's greatest enemy with a man who used to lie for a living. As they drove, silence filled the car, not awkward but heavy. At one point, Mia looked over. "When this is done, assuming we're still standing, what happens to you?" Mike didn't take his eyes off the road. "You mean when you no longer need a bodyguard who used to lie to you?" "I mean when I look at you and realize I don't know where your loyalty ends and your feelings begin." He exhaled. "It's already blurred, and that scares the hell out of me." She nodded. "Me too." They arrived at dusk. The facility was surrounded by a rusted fence, motion detectors, and one security booth manned by a sleepy guard. Mike handled the breach with fluid precision, cutting wires, timing movements, slipping through shadows like a ghost. Mia followed closely, nerves coiled tight, heart pounding but steady. Inside, rows of server units hummed with artificial life. Mike moved fast, locating a master node. He pulled a small drive from his jacket and began copying data. A soft ping warned them of a secondary motion alert. "Someone's coming," he said. 10 minutes, max." "Then we move," she replied. They extracted the drive and made their way back, barely missing a patrol. By the time they reached the car, headlights appeared behind them, a black SUV, high beam on, accelerating. Mike hit the gas, tires skidding on gravel as the SUV gave chase. The Pennsylvania backroads twisted like knots, and Mia gripped the dash as Mike maneuvered with instinctual skill. "They weren't supposed to know we were here," she said, shouting over the wind. "Someone tipped them off." "Then we're not done cleaning house," Mike growled. The SUV eventually peeled off after a tense 6 minutes. Either they lost them, or the pursuers had what they needed. Back in the city, Mike scanned the drive. The evidence was damning. Direct correspondences between Noble Axis operatives and 3 Solara insiders, Julian Mars, the ousted Howard Renner, and an unnamed party using a rotating cipher. Worse, there were timestamps of private board meetings recorded using a hacked microphone embedded in the boardroom lighting. Mia stared at the screen. "They've been listening to us for months." Mike leaned closer. "This is enough to trigger a federal investigation, but it'll drag on. They'll buy lawyers, plant stories, stall for years. Then we go public, controlled leak, internal memo, expose Julian, show strength, they'll come after you harder." "Let them," she said. "I've been hit before, I'm still standing." That night, Mia made the decision. A full shareholder briefing, not hidden in legalese, not buried in PR lingo, but a direct confrontation, names named, evidence revealed. And behind her, silently supporting her as always, stood Mike, no longer just the man who lied his way into her company, but the one man willing to bleed for it. In the quiet after the announcement draft was finalized, Mia turned to him and said, "I don't want to lead with fear anymore." "You never did," Mike replied. "You just forgot what it felt like to lead with trust." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. And it wasn't bitter. It was human, fragile, real. The war wasn't over, but the line had been drawn. And this time, Mia wasn't backing away from it, she was daring them to cross it. The morning Mia released the internal memo, the entire building vibrated with tension, not from the earthquake of scandal that rippled through the upper ranks, but from the silence that followed it. No one said a word in the elevators. Conversations in the halls became short, clipped, or vanished altogether. And yet, no one left, no one resigned. Because beneath the fear, beneath the confusion, there was something stronger, respect. Mia had done what few CEOs ever dared. She called the rot by its name. Mike walked a few steps behind her as she headed to the top floor for the emergency board meeting. Unlike previous ones, this wasn't a private affair. All senior department heads were invited. Press was excluded for now. But Mia wanted the room full. She wanted eyes. She wanted witnesses. The walls were made of glass. Let the truth reflect in every surface. Julian Mars was already seated when she arrived. His expression was the calm of a man who either had nothing to hide or knew exactly how to hide it. Mia took her seat at the head of the table. Her voice was steady, sharp, surgical. "This company is under attack, not from outside, not from competitors, but from within. I won't stand for it, and I don't expect you to either." She laid out the evidence. Unauthorized access logs, audio files, financial transfers routed through blind trusts, and above all, the motive, greed, cloaked in tradition. Julian didn't blink until the last slide showed his name. Then he simply folded his hands and said, "Anyone can fabricate a trail. This is a vendetta, not proof." "Then explain the server breach linked to your travel log in Zurich. Coincidence. Explain your coded emails with Noble Axis executives. Networking. Explain the fact that every major attempt to sabotage Solara's clean grid expansion came from a vote you either led or influenced. Due diligence." Mia stood. "Explain why I should let you keep your seat." The room went silent. For a moment, it seemed like Julian might launch into a full defense. But instead, he looked at Mike. "You're not a businessman," he said. "You're a weapon, a hired one. How long until you turn on her, too?" Mike's reply was quiet, but lethal. "I did turn. That's why I'm here." By the end of the hour, Julian was suspended pending investigation. It was a procedural move meant to appease the legal team and maintain order, but everyone knew what it really meant. His era was done. But the backlash wasn't. That afternoon, multiple news sites ran leaked versions of the memo, despite it being intended for internal eyes only. Solara's stock price swung like a pendulum. Supporters hailed Mia as a visionary leader willing to stand up against corruption. Critics called her reckless, emotionally driven, naive. Through it all, she stayed composed, except when alone. Late that night, in her office lit only by the glow of the city, Mia stared out at the skyline. "Was it worth it?" she asked. Mike leaned in the doorway behind her. "You knew it wouldn't be easy. Knowing doesn't make it easier." "No," he said, "but it means you don't flinch when it hurts." She turned, voice raw. "I thought I was strong enough for this. I built this company from scratch. I survived the politics, the betrayal, the loss. But this level of venom, I didn't see it coming." Mike walked over, handed her a folder. "Then see this." She opened it. Inside were fresh intel files, routes, names, encrypted notes recovered from the drive they took in Pennsylvania. "They're not retreating, they're recalibrating. Noble Axis is launching a corporate front, a hostile acquisition attempt, using third-tier investors as proxies. They're going to try to buy us out? Not try. They're already doing it. Quietly, strategically. They're betting you won't see the squeeze until it's too late." Mia's jaw clenched. "Then we force them into the light." The next morning, Solara launched a counterstrike, an aggressive public campaign reframing their battle not just as a company scandal, but a war for the future of energy. Mia did interviews, town halls, public podcasts. She spoke directly to communities that relied on Solara's clean energy programs, especially those long neglected by traditional energy companies. She became a voice, not just for her brand, but for a movement. The public began to shift. Her approval ratings among middle-aged and senior demographics rose sharply. People who had lived through decades of being lied to by corporate giants saw something different in her. They saw fight, they saw clarity, they saw someone who didn't play safe. But with exposure came escalation. Mike began receiving anonymous warnings. "Back off. Walk away. She's not worth dying for." One note included a photo of Jordan, Mike's son, taken from across the street near his school. That night, Mike didn't go home. He doubled the security detail around Jordan. Then he confronted Mia. "They're getting personal now." She looked up from a stack of reports. "How personal?" He handed her the photo. Her hand trembled. "This is the line," he said. "If you cross it, there's no coming back." "They already crossed it," she whispered. Mia decided to move Jordan and Mike temporarily into her penthouse, not out of fear, but unity. "They don't get to separate us," she said. "We stay visible, together." That first night, while Jordan slept in the guest room and the city sighed beneath them, Mia sat beside Mike on the balcony. "When you first walked into my life," she said, "I didn't trust you. I didn't deserve it," he replied. "But now I do. Now you've earned it," she whispered. There was no kiss. Not yet. But there was understanding. And for people like them marked by war, business, betrayal, that meant more. The next morning, Mia received a message from the Department of Energy. The White House wanted to talk. Solara's mission, it seemed, had become a matter of national interest. And Mia, whether she was ready or not, was now part of a larger game. Mike read the message over her shoulder. "You're not just fighting for your company anymore," she nodded. "I'm fighting for everyone who ever thought they didn't have a voice." He looked at her. "Then we'd better make sure it's loud." When Mia stepped into the Roosevelt room at the White House, the air didn't feel ceremonial. It felt calculated, polished, controlled. Across the long oak table sat advisors, energy executives, and a few representatives whose smiles didn't reach their eyes. A senior official from the Department of Energy extended his hand and introduced himself as Secretary Roland Kent. "Miss Hartley," he said, his voice smooth, "we appreciate your boldness. It's refreshing." Mia returned the handshake firmly. "I'm not here to refresh, Secretary. I'm here because a multi-billion-dollar fossil fuel conglomerate is trying to destroy everything we've built at Solara, and they're not even hiding anymore." "That's precisely why we brought you in," he replied, motioning for her to sit. "You've sparked something across the country. Clean energy isn't just an ideal now, it's a demand. But disruption brings enemies, and we need to know what you plan to do next." Mike sat quietly behind her, watching every twitch, every glance. He wasn't there for diplomacy, he was there for protection. Because the more Mia climbed, the more exposed she became. And this room, this wasn't just politics, it was power. Real, old-world power, the kind that smiled while laying traps. Mia responded calmly, outlining Solara's expansion roadmap, the threats she'd faced, the evidence they had collected against Noble Axis. But when she mentioned the infiltration of her board and the personal threats, the room shifted. Kent steepled his fingers. "Are you accusing another U.S. corporation of economic sabotage and espionage?" Mia didn't flinch. I'm not accusing. I'm reporting. He nodded once, slowly. Then you'd better be ready for what comes next. Because this isn't just business anymore, Miss Hartley. This is war. Outside, as they exited through the south portico, Mike leaned in. You feel it too? Yes, Mia said, her breath visible in the cold morning air. They're not all on our side. Some of them want Solara to fall, just slower, quieter. So they can take the pieces, she murmured. Over the next week, a new wave of attacks began, not overt, but psychological. Shareholder confidence wavered. A supposed whistleblower emerged online, claiming Solara had manipulated clean energy data. News outlets picked it up like wildfire, ignoring evidence, chasing controversy. And then came the leak, an old security clearance file from Mike's past, revealing his work in covert operations, his deception, his lies. The media labeled him the shadow agent. They accused Mia of harboring a criminal, of leading with secrecy instead of transparency. Her board panicked. Investors pulled. Protesters stood outside Solara HQ with signs reading, "No more lies, energy tyrant, corporate spy." Mike expected her to snap, to cave, but she didn't. Instead, she called a press conference. It was held in the very courtyard where she had once announced Solara's first solar grid deal. This time, the crowd was 10 times larger, cameras everywhere, reporters jostling for front-row questions. Mia stood alone at the podium, no PR team, no talking points, just her. "You've read the headlines," she began. "And yes, it's true. Mike Talbot worked in covert intelligence. He entered my company under false pretenses, but he also saved my life. He uncovered the web of corruption trying to dismantle what we've built. He stood by me when others fled, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm proud, because sometimes the truth doesn't wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it wears scars." The crowd fell silent. Then, slowly, applause began quiet, scattered, and then it grew. Louder, unified. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough to remind her she wasn't alone. Later that evening, Mia found Mike on the rooftop garden of her building, standing against the rail, the city lights casting shadows across his face. "You didn't have to defend me," he said. "I did," she replied. "Not just for you. For everyone who's ever been written off because of where they came from." He turned to her. "They won't stop. Noble Access will keep coming. That fake whistleblower? I tracked her IP. It's routed through a shell firm tied to their legal team. Then we fight harder. You're not tired?" "Terrified, but not tired." The next day, Solara's internal cyber team uncovered something massive, proof that Noble Access had not only orchestrated digital attacks, but had also manipulated environmental data to fake compliance with federal regulations. It wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was environmental fraud on a national scale. The implications were massive: criminal charges, federal sanctions. If the Department of Justice moved on it, it could mean the end of Noble Access. But that's when it happened. Solara's primary data warehouse located in New Jersey caught fire. Arson. Within hours, terabytes of physical backups were gone. Gone with them. Direct hard-copy trails tying Noble Access to the crimes. The message was clear: you're not safe, your evidence isn't safe, your people aren't safe. Oh. Mia called an emergency meeting at her home. This time, only the inner circle: Mike, her CFO Nadine, the new legal counsel Ben, and 2 trusted engineers from the cyber team. "We can't play by their rules anymore," Mia said. "Every time we follow the process, they torch it. Every time we build, they burn." "So what are you saying?" Nadine asked. Mia looked at Mike. "We go offensive, not just with evidence, with exposure. We leak what we know directly to investigative journalists, real ones, the kind that still care about truth." Mike nodded. "I know who to call." Within days, encrypted drives were sent to 3 trusted reporters from independent outlets. Simultaneously, Mia arranged exclusive interviews with retired federal agents willing to corroborate tactics used by conglomerates like Noble Access. The tide turned again. Not fast, not loud, but deep. People started questioning the narrative, digging, uncovering, reposting. Across social platforms and radio call-ins, the sentiment was shifting. Maybe Mia wasn't the villain, maybe she was the firewall. And through it all, Mike remained close, watching, guarding, Not just her physical safety, but her will to continue. Because if she broke, it all collapsed. But she didn't. Not when someone threw a brick through her car window. Not when her father, once estranged, now suddenly manipulated by media, called her a disgrace. Not when an anonymous note said, "TikTok, we know where you sleep." She just kept showing up, day after day. Not because she was fearless, but because she knew too many people were counting on her to keep going. On the last night of that week, with the city silent and the stars faint above the skyline, Mia looked out from her penthouse balcony and said quietly to Mike, "I'm not just fighting for Solara anymore." "I know," he said, stepping beside her. "You're fighting for everyone who never got the chance to be heard." She exhaled. "If I fall, you won't," Mike interrupted, "because I'm not just protecting a CEO anymore. I'm protecting the heart of something bigger." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because in that silence, something deeper formed between them. Trust, unshakable, earned, and unbreakable. At 5:43 a.m., the Solara headquarters was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that feels like a warning, not a relief. The lights on the 18th floor flickered once, then steadied, casting a dull glow across the long hallway leading to Mia's office. Mike had already walked the perimeter twice, checking every security feed, every blind spot. Something in his gut told him the attack wasn't over. Noble Axis didn't back off. They just changed tactics. Inside her office, Mia sat in a leather chair, eyes scanning a legal brief that outlined a pending federal injunction, one that could, if granted, halt Solara's entire East Coast operation. "They're using the courts now," she said without looking up. "They're bleeding us dry with paper cuts." Mike leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "It's a distraction. They know we're close to exposing the offshore accounts. They're trying to make you flinch." She looked up. "I don't flinch. Not anymore." "Oh," but she did pause, because the exhaustion was real. Not the kind you could sleep off, but the kind that settled into your bones when too many people expected you to hold the sky up with bare hands. Still, she stood. "We have a meeting with the data forensics team in 20 minutes. You coming?" "Always," Mike replied. The meeting was held in a windowless conference room, 2 floors down, safer, more secure. The air buzzed with tension. Screens lit up with file paths, traces of altered metadata, digital fingerprints leading to a familiar name, Byron Halder, former CTO of Noble Axis. "He covered his trail well," said Amelia, the lead analyst, "but not well enough. He routed through a Vietnamese data center that kept redundant logs. We traced the breach to an encrypted thumb drive, and guess who logged into the system 15 minutes before our network crashed last month?" She clicked. A still image of a man with gray hair and a cruel smile appeared on screen. "Halder." Mike narrowed his eyes. "He was supposed to be off the grid. Last we heard, he vanished after that raid in Jakarta." "He's back," Amelia said, "and he's watching." "Watching what?" "You, Mia, Solara, everything." Mia stared at the image, her fingers tightening into a fist. "So we know who, we know how. Now we take it to the feds." Ben, their legal counsel, shifted uneasily. "That's complicated. With the media already turning on us, the DOJ will need airtight evidence. We need to catch him in the act, or we risk being painted as desperate." "Then let's catch him," Mia said flatly. Mike didn't speak, but his mind was already racing. Byron Halder didn't make mistakes. If he resurfaced, it meant one of 2 things: he wanted to be found, or he wanted them to think they had found him. Either way, it was bait, dangerous bait. That night, Mike tapped into his old network people who didn't ask questions, only required coordinates and purpose. By midnight, he had a location: an abandoned facility in Newark, once owned by Noble Axis, now listed under a shell company linked to Halder. Mia insisted on going. "This isn't just a corporate mission. This is personal. He's targeting my people, my company, and my name." "And if it's a trap?" Mike asked. "Then let's spring it. Together." The facility was cold, silent, and half-lit. Metal creaked overhead as they stepped inside, flashlights sweeping across broken consoles and dust-coated desks. But then they found it an isolated server bank, still humming quietly. Mike approached slowly, watching for tripwires. "It's live," he said, "still connected to the grid. Can we extract anything?" Mia asked. "Not here. It's too risky, but we can clone the drive. It took 10 minutes, 10 long, breath-held minutes. As the data transferred, Mia walked through the room, pausing at a metal table where photographs lay scattered. She picked one up, her, standing on the Solara stage during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Another her father, years ago, accepting a civic award. Another Mike and her at the picnic with her staff. All printed, all dated, all marked. "He's been tracking us for months," she said, voice tight. The last photo made her stop cold. It was a photo of her bedroom window, taken from across the street. Nighttime. Curtains slightly parted. "He was there," she whispered. "He's been in New York." Mike moved beside her. "We're not leaving without that data. Let's get out of here." They exited through the east stairwell, moving quickly but cautiously. Outside, the street was empty, but a black van sat parked half a block down. Mike saw it immediately. "Go to the car," he said. "Don't run. Don't look back." "Mike, now." She obeyed, her heels echoing down the sidewalk. Mike approached the van, hand near his concealed weapon. But as he neared, the engine revved, tires screeched, and the van tore off into the night. He memorized the plates instantly. Back at Mia's apartment, adrenaline still humming in their bloodstreams, they uploaded the cloned data to an air-gapped system. What they saw chilled them. Hundreds of hours of intercepted emails, manipulated financial records, conversations between Noble Axis executives planning a deliberate market manipulation scheme, and most damning of all, transcripts of payments to 2 sitting members of the Energy Oversight Board. Bribes. Unmistakable. Mike exhaled. This isn't just exposure. This is a takedown. Mia didn't speak right away. She stood, arms folded, staring out the window at the sleeping city below. "They'll come harder now," she finally said. "They already were," Mike replied. "We just didn't know how deep." She turned to him, a strange calm settling in her face. "We take this public, everything, and we do it now, before they find a way to bury it. You'll be risking everything. So will you." He nodded. "Then let's risk it." Later that night, long after the files had been encrypted and prepped for release, Mia sat on the couch, the glow of the city lights washing over her. Mike handed her a glass of water and sat beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. Then, quietly, she asked, "Do you ever regret lying to me?" "Every day," he said. "But I regret more what would have happened if I hadn't met you." "You changed," she whispered. "You could have ruined me, but you didn't." He looked at her. "You saved me before I ever got the chance to save you." For the first time in weeks, she let herself lean on him, not out of weakness, but trust. The battle ahead would be brutal, but at that moment, they weren't CEO and bodyguard. They weren't target and infiltrator. They were just 2 people, bruised but unbroken, waiting for dawn. The press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m., but by 7:15, the sidewalk outside Solara headquarters was already crowded with reporters, camera crews, and curious bystanders. It was a quiet hum at first, microphones being checked, cables taped down, but the air carried tension like an approaching thunderstorm. Inside the building, in a private briefing room on the 21st floor, Mia stood in front of a monitor, shoulders squared, while the team reviewed their last-minute checklist. "The evidence package is clean," Amelia confirmed. "Metadata intact. Financial trails traceable. Voice clips match identity signatures. If anyone questions credibility, we can redirect them to the full chain of custody." "And the DOJ?" Mia asked. "They've acknowledged receipt of the same files," Ben said. "But they won't act publicly unless the media pressure builds first." Maya turned to Mike, who hadn't said a word since they'd walked in together. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "I've faced combat raids in the Andes with less tension than I feel right now." "Good," she said, almost smiling. "Because if this doesn't work, we may need your old skills by sundown." At 8:59, Mia walked toward the stage in the main lobby, which had been hastily converted into a press briefing area. Mike stood just behind the curtain, watching every entrance, every shadow. His instincts were on full alert. He knew how people like Halder operated when cornered. They didn't go quiet. They struck back, dirty and fast. "Good morning," Mia said into the microphone, voice steady. "For years, Solara has been committed to clean energy, transparency, and ethical growth. Today, we bring forward proof that not everyone in our industry shares those values." Her eyes didn't waver, her voice didn't tremble. Slide after slide illuminated behind her on the screen wire transfers, audio recordings, insider emails, each one like a hammer against the glass fortress of Noble Axis. This isn't just corporate sabotage, she continued. It's a criminal conspiracy involving bribery, data theft, and a deliberate attempt to dismantle fair competition. We have reported this to federal authorities, and we invite further scrutiny. The room buzzed with questions, hands shooting up, flashes going off like lightning. Mike noticed the man before anyone else did, a tall figure in a courier's jacket moving too quickly through the crowd. His eyes weren't on the stage, they were scanning the room, calculating. Mike moved, quietly, efficiently. He intercepted him near the west hallway, flashing his old federal badge under his coat. "Problem?" he asked. The man hesitated, then shrugged. "Just dropping something off." "Not anymore," Mike said, already signaling to Solara's internal security team. The man was escorted out empty, handed but likely not alone. That was a probe, a distraction. The real strike would come later. Backstage, after Mia wrapped the conference, she walked off the platform and leaned against the wall. For a moment, she looked utterly spent. "It's done," she said, breathing heavily. "No," Mike corrected. "It started," and he was right. By noon, 3 major media networks had picked up the story. By 3 p.m., the Solara press inbox had over 3,000 messages. And by 6:45 p.m., a thin, calculated hit piece aired from a well-known outlet claiming that the documents were unverified and possibly fabricated by a disgruntled insider. "Here it comes," Amelia muttered, watching the screen. Mia stood with arms folded, not surprised. "I want every editor we've briefed to get the uncut file logs. Full version, no summaries." On it, Mike stepped away from the conference room, answering a call from an encrypted number. The voice on the other end was gruff, familiar. "It's happening. They're spooked. Halder's people are calling in favors left and right." "And the DOJ?" Mike asked. "Quiet. Too quiet. My guess they're preparing a raid but don't want to tip their hand. You've got maybe 48 hours before this goes nuclear." "Thanks, Red," Mike said. "One more thing, Halder. Where is he?" "Offshore, somewhere in the Caribbean. But he's not hiding. He's consolidating." That night, Mia and Mike stayed at her penthouse for safety. The building was heavily surveilled, but Mike still took 3 passes around the perimeter, checking for anomalies. When he returned, Mia was on the balcony, barefoot, holding a glass of wine, hair loose and blowing in the evening breeze. "Do you think this will actually work?" she asked without turning. "That we can win?" "I think you already won," he said, stepping beside her. "You showed the truth. That's always step 1. Step 2? We survived the fallout." She smiled weakly, then turned to look at him. "You've been with me every step of this. You gave me something to believe in," Mike said. "Something worth protecting." There was a silence, soft and intimate, stretched between them like a thread, not quite broken, not yet tied. Then Mia's phone vibrated. She checked it and stiffened. The SEC just froze Noble Axis's primary trading account. Mike raised his eyebrows. "That fast? Looks like someone in DC finally grew a backbone. Or maybe," Mike said cautiously, "someone realized they're next." The next morning, the retaliation began not through bullets or breaking glass, but lawsuits, subpoenas, an anonymous whistleblower, claims that questioned Mia's leadership, her father's legacy, even her personal relationships. One headline read, "Sleeping with Security. Is Solara's CEO compromised from within? They're coming for your credibility," Mike said, scanning the articles. "Hard. Let them," Mia replied. "Truth always looks messy at first, but I'm not backing down." They met with federal agents later that afternoon. It was tense but fruitful. Evidence was transferred securely. Witnesses began to come forward, employees from Noble Axis who'd been silenced, threatened, or paid off. Each one added weight to Mia's cause. But Mike noticed something else, a tightening of the net. Surveillance vans near the building, social media chatter from bot accounts accelerating smear campaigns. A signal. They weren't done yet. That night, Solara's servers were hit with a massive DDoS attack, millions of requests flooding in from across the globe. "They're trying to erase everything," Amelia shouted over the alarm. "Power down the backup clusters." Mike was already moving, accessing the physical drives, isolating systems. The emergency team worked in practiced chaos, and after 33 minutes, the attack was neutralized. No data was lost. But the message was clear. Halder was still in the game. Later, as calm returned and systems hummed back online, Mia walked into the server room, her blazer draped over one arm. She looked around at the exhausted team, then at Mike. "They want to break me," she said. "They won't," he replied, "because you're not alone." "No," she said, quieter now, "because I'm finally angry enough to finish what I started." In the shadows of the server room, as machines blinked and pulsed like artificial stars, Mike understood something deeper. This wasn't just a company fighting for survival. This was a reckoning, and the next blow would be the loudest yet. By dawn, the first signs of physical retaliation surfaced: graffiti across Solara's walls, slurs sprayed in red like blood, broken glass in the lobby that wasn't there the night before. Mike didn't flinch, neither did Mia. They walked through the lobby as if stepping onto a battlefield, each shard beneath their feet a reminder that truth came with consequences. Security cams caught two men, Amelia briefed them, faces obscured. One wore a utility badge from a bogus cleaning service. "They knew our blind spots. They're escalating," Mike muttered, "testing our nerves. They're about to find out we have more spine than they do," Mia said, voice like steel. That day, Mia stood in front of her leadership team, some of whom had grown visibly uneasy over the past few weeks. "Let me be clear," she said. "What we're facing is not just a PR battle, it's a war for our future. If anyone here doesn't have the stomach for it, I understand. But if you stay, we move as one." A pause, silence. Then one by one they nodded, some clenched fists, some looked down but no one left. That solidarity was a fuel source of its own. Meanwhile, Mike activated the last piece of the insurance plan he had quietly built behind the scenes, a secure vault of files, video testimony, and unaltered logs stored in an undisclosed location and programmed to release to media, courts, and watchdogs in the event of digital or physical compromise. It wasn't just backup, it was leverage. "If I disappear," he told Mia, "pull the red tab in the filing room drawer labeled Texas Sunday. Everything's ready." "You're not disappearing," she replied. "We both stay vertical, that's the deal." But by nightfall, everything shifted. A call came from a private line Mike didn't recognize. He answered, voice guarded. The line crackled, and then came a voice he hadn't heard in 6 years. "Hello, Michael." His stomach tightened. Mason Carr, the man who had once been his commanding officer in an elite intelligence unit, and the very man who had introduced him, years ago, to the network that Halder now used to shield his empire. "You're in over your head," Mason said. "This was never your war." "It is now," Mike replied coldly. "You need to walk away. Mia's not clean. You're lying. She's using you to fight a battle her father started and lost. You think Halder is the villain? He's the result. Her family made him. You're fighting shadows." Mike hung up without another word. But his mind was spinning. Mia had been honest, or so he believed. Still, the seed of doubt had been planted, intentional and sharp. He returned to the penthouse, where she was reading over legal briefs, glasses perched on the tip of her nose. She looked up. "Something wrong?" He hesitated. Then, "What really happened between your father and Halder?" Her eyes flickered. "He trusted Halder," she said, "brought him in as a junior partner. But when Dad started putting ethics over expansion, Halder went around him, poached clients, stole patents. When Dad threatened legal action, Halder blackmailed him with doctored records, made it look like Dad had misappropriated funds. SEC launched an investigation. My father died before he was cleared. So Halder didn't just attack the company," Mike said. "He destroyed your family. That's why I rebuilt Solara from scratch. Every policy we follow, every document we archive, it's all designed to prevent what happened to my father from happening again." Her voice didn't break, but her hands did tremble. Mike sat beside her, silent. The seed of doubt hadn't found fertile soil. It withered and died, burned by the clarity in her voice. He knew now. She wasn't a pawn. She was a storm contained in human skin. Later that night, the penthouse building lost power. No warning, no storm, just darkness. Backup generators clicked on, but only emergency systems came online. Mike's instincts kicked in immediately. "Stay away from windows," he ordered. Mia didn't question. Amelia was on speaker in seconds. "Grid looks tampered with. It's not a blackout, it's targeted." "Get out," Mike said. "Now." But it was too late. An explosion rocked the street outside, small, controlled, but enough to send panic through the neighborhood. Mike ran to the stairwell, his gun drawn. At floor 17, he caught movement, 2 men in tactical gear ascending fast. Not police, not feds, mercs. "Get to the safe room," he shouted to Mia through comms. "Now." She moved without hesitation, securing herself in the panic room hidden behind a false panel in the closet. Mike bought her time, moving like a ghost, 2 steps ahead, striking first. One man went down with a broken wrist and a shattered knee. The other fought harder. They scuffled near the stairwell, blows landing fast and dirty, until Mike used the man's own momentum to throw him down half a flight of stairs. Sirens wailed in the distance now. The cavalry was finally coming. But Mike didn't wait. He made sure Mia was safe, then secured the surveillance footage, labeled it, and uploaded a duplicate to the vault drive. "They just declared open war," he told her. "And they hit you at home." End. The next day, Solara filed for federal protection under the Whistleblower Act. Noble Axis's stock plummeted 18%. Multiple board members resigned. Halder remained silent, but the press noted his yacht had vanished from radar. The storm had broken, but it wasn't over. As Mia stood before her staff once more, her voice clear despite the bruises on her arms from the fall she'd taken the night before, she said one thing that landed deeper than any headline. "They came into my home, but I'm still standing. If anyone doubts our cause, look at what they're willing to do to silence us." Mike watched from the back of the room, arms crossed. He had been a spy, a saboteur, a ghost. Now he was something more, a witness, a protector, maybe even a believer. That night, as they sat on the balcony again, bruises fading under twilight, Mia asked quietly, "Do you think it ends now?" "No," Mike said, "but I think the worst part is behind us." "How can you be sure?" "Because they finally showed us their face," he said. "And once the monster stops hiding, it starts losing." She leaned her head against his shoulder, silent. And for once, silence didn't mean fear. It meant peace, temporary, earned, and preparing for what came next. The final hearing was held in courtroom 3C of the federal building on Lafayette Street, a place where marble columns tried to look noble, but where the air always smelled faintly of fear and paper. Mia sat at the long wooden table, dressed not for war but for dignity. A charcoal blazer, no jewelry, her hair pulled back to reveal nothing but calm resolve. Beside her sat Mike, clean-shaven, a modest tie, hands folded, a quiet fire in his eyes. The courtroom was full journalists in the back, Solara employees scattered through the pews, and behind the polished glass, the ghosts of 1,000 voices waiting to be heard. It wasn't just Mia's case anymore. It was a reckoning. The opposing counsel for Noble Axis was a man named Donald Hayes, polished and smug, with a reputation for spinning fire into mist. He leaned in and whispered to Mia just before the proceedings began. "You've made quite the show, Miss Monroe. Let's see if your fairy tale ends in reality." She didn't respond, because it wasn't a show, and it wasn't a fairy tale. It was her life. The judge called the room to order. Witnesses were introduced, depositions acknowledged. Then the screen lit up. Mike had preloaded a time-sequenced video series that detailed the data theft, the offshore accounts, the NDAs used as threats, the security footage from the night of the break-in, and the internal memos Mia had uncovered. It all played in chilling silence, each frame a hammer on the walls Noble Axis had built. People in the courtroom shifted. Even Donald's smile faltered. But the moment that broke the dam wasn't video. It was Mia's voice. When asked to deliver a closing statement, she rose and approached the bench without notes. "My father built Solara on a handshake, on trust. He believed in building something better than himself. Halder took that and twisted it into power, then used that power to hurt others. I rebuilt this company not to get revenge, but to finish what my father started, to prove that good business doesn't have to mean ruthless business. I'm not asking this court to punish them out of spite. I'm asking you to stop them before they rot everything they touch." She returned to her seat. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Even the judge took a long breath before adjourning the session. They wouldn't know the verdict until morning. And that night, as they left the courthouse, cameras flashing around them like lightning, Mia turned to Mike and said, Even if we lose, I'd do it all again." He looked at her. "You haven't lost anything yet." That night, they didn't go home. They went to the beach. Coney Island, deserted except for a few night fishermen and the distant hum of neon. They walked the boardwalk in silence, each step a release. Mike finally spoke. "I came into your life with lies." "I know," Mia said. "I let you in anyway. I betrayed your trust before I earned it. And now? Now I'd rather die than see you fall alone." She smiled. "I guess that's what they call growth." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. "This wasn't part of the plan," he said. "None of it was. But if there's still room in your life for someone trying to make things right," he opened it. A simple silver band, no diamonds. Just clean, clear intention. "I love you, Mia. Not because you saved me, but because you reminded me I was worth saving." She didn't cry. Not yet. She took the ring, slipped it onto her finger, and whispered, "Then let's build something that won't need saving." They kissed beneath a sky too big for words. The next morning, the verdict was delivered. Noble Axis was found guilty of fraudulent reporting, abuse of fiduciary responsibility, and obstruction of federal inquiry. Halder, who had finally returned under pressure, was arrested on live television as he disembarked his private jet in Miami. Solara's stock surged, the industry shifted, and somewhere deep inside the system, the needle of justice tilted barely, but meaningfully. 2 weeks later, Solara held a public town hall for employees and partners. Mike stood off stage, arms crossed, watching as Mia addressed the room. "This isn't just about surviving," she said. "It's about defining who we want to be, not in the boardroom, but as people. We fought not just for a company, but for the kind of future we want our kids to inherit. Thank you for standing with me, for believing this fight was worth it." Applause followed. It wasn't thunderous, but it was steady, earned. And afterward, as they left the stage hand in hand, someone in the back of the room yelled, "Hey, Monroe, how's it feel to be the woman who took down a giant?" Mia paused, turned, and replied, "Feels like I've just started." Outside, fall had arrived, leaves curled into amber, and the wind hinted at change. Mike picked up his daughter from school, her backpack oversized and bouncing. "You're late," she said with a grin. "Had to finish helping someone brave," he said. She climbed into the back seat, kicked off her shoes, and asked, "Are we going back to the park this weekend?" "Absolutely," he said. "It's tradition now." As they drove home, the skyline unfolded, Solara's tower no longer a target, but a lighthouse. Mike looked at it through the mirror, then at Mia beside him. She caught his glance. "What?" "Nothing," he said. "Just thinking that maybe justice doesn't always wear a badge or swing a gavel. Sometimes it wears heels and builds companies," she said. "Or carries snacks and drives a kid to soccer," he added. She laughed, and in that laugh was everything they'd earned: forgiveness, purpose, and the kind of love that rises not from perfection, but from persistence. The kind that chooses truth, even when it costs everything. And somehow, on the other side of all that risk, finds peace. Finally, the story of Mia and Mike reminds us that true justice is not always delivered in courtrooms or headlines. It often begins in quiet acts of integrity. Redemption is possible when one chooses truth over deception. And even the deepest betrayals can lead to healing when met with courage, accountability, and love. In a world driven by ambition and power, it is empathy, second chances, and the willingness to stand beside what is right that define our humanity.